Fuck HIPAA, man. Just, fuck HIPAA.
DisastrousInvolvedI.
Disclaimer, the content presented in this video is purely fictional and intended for entertainment purposes only. So, a few hours after I conducted Notgod More's second interview and roughly 12 hours before everything went to hell, I had an incredibly uncomfortable conversation with Christoph. He came in off his shift exuding the very particular stress aura I last noted right before he admitted that he'd made a dirty joke or three at my expense. He sat down on the edge of the bed, practically thrumming with anxiety. What's wrong? I asked. He wouldn't look at me. I am sorry for how I treated you today. I knew he was referring to the fact that he'd fallen for Notgod More's creepy, if fundamentally underwhelming, manipulation tactics. You're not the first person to fall under the spell of an evil preacher. But you might be the first person to deprogram yourself in under 12 hours, so congratulations. Stop trying to be funny. This is not funny, you are not funny, and I am being serious. I should not have believed the things he said. Even if I could not help but believe them a little, I should not have behaved that way toward you. I'm not angry, so, I wish you were. I wanted to say, that's literally the first time anyone's told me they want me to be mad at them, but I knew just by looking at him that that was the wrong thing to say. Well, my feelings were hurt, I said honestly. But it's okay. I understand. There is nothing to understand except that I was wrong. I was already tired of this. I appreciate it, I understand, and I forgive you. Ease up. He did not ease up, instead he said, I am sorry for how I treated you before. I wanted to sink down into the floor, it must have shown on my face, because he said, I know it makes you uncomfortable having to hear this and I am uncomfortable having to say it, but it needs to be said. Well, if it makes you feel better, that did make me really mad at you for a long time. But we talked about it already, if you'll recall. You stopped being that way, and I'm not mad anymore. But he still wasn't finished. There is an inmate in Ward 2, he said. A man who always says foul things to the women who are V2 agents and inmates. The things he says to them are the kind of things I said to you. I knew they were wrong to say when I said them to you. It is why I did it, and I have wanted to apologize for a long time. But I still did not know how it must have been for you until I heard him today. I'm ashamed I did that to you, and I am sorry. I know you are, and I know you have been. Now you need to know it's all under the bridge. Okay. No, it is not okay, and there is more. I should not ever have called you ugly. I came dangerously close to laughing. The word you used was actually unpretty. That is not any better, so do not tell me that it is. It took all my strength not to start my next sentence with. Look, buddy. You had a bad day and there's a 50% chance the Pantheon breaks open at midnight or dawn or something, so how about you relax and get ready for bed? I know all of that, and I know that it is important. But so is this. At that point, I gave him a hug, partly because he deserved it, and partly because I wanted to end the conversation. It was a little bit of an awkward hug, although to be fair, most of my hugs are somewhere on the awkward spectrum, but it obviously wasn't too awkward for him, because he relaxed and made no more apologies. We made a plan for the next day in the event of a containment breach, not that it was much of a plan, given that it consisted of Christoph calling out sick so we could stay in our locked room together, and went to bed. We didn't sleep well, but we slept. Nothing happened that night, nothing happened in the morning. Christoph had just begun to stress about calling off sick. None of them do a quarter of the work I do, so Richard will be doing it all himself, when a commotion exploded out in the corridor. Second later, someone started pounding on our door. Christoph ushered me across the room as the knocking intensified. Then, hey. Hey. The voice was vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. Christoph's grim expression broke into a puzzled frown. Who is it? I whispered, Kyle. He hesitated, then said, stay where you are, and went to the door. The second he opened it, a wall of noise exploded inward. Kyle leaned in, frantic. Several feet behind him, splayed on the floor, was Ms. Polly surrounded by a flurry of staff. She was trying to fight them off, but weakly. Almost like she was drugged. Christoph, Kyle panted. We need you down in Ward 2. I know you're sick, but it's bad and Richard's in trouble. We need help now. Mikey suddenly rushed past the door, barely sidestepping Ms. Polly's flailing body. Christoph jerked toward him, almost as if to follow. Christoph. Kyle sounded close to tears. We need help. What's wrong? One of the workers wrangling Ms. Polly looked up. I recognized her, Carmen, the girl Mary had borderline harassed during a staff movie night. What's happening? It's bad. It's really bad. We need your help, Christoph. I'm sorry, but, Christoph cut him off and spoke to Carmen. What is wrong with Ms. Polly? Her controller went to shit. Like it's dead. She keeps seizing and now her body can be used as a portal by anything at any time. She's in critical danger. She is a critical danger. Kyle, what the fuck is going on downstairs? It's a disaster. Christoph, please. Christoph hesitated again. Let me get the uniform on. There's no time. Just come on. Christoph glanced back at me. I approached, but he shook his head. No. Stay here. I want to help. I said stay here. His voice was harsh enough to make me flinch. I looked away reflexively, and my eyes caught Ms. Polly's. Her face reflected my fear back at me. You cannot help, he said. Stay here no matter what. Lock the door when I leave. He followed Kyle out, closing the door behind him. After another burst of activity from Miss Polly and a lot of yelling, they got her under control and out of the corridor. Silence swiftly fell. After a few minutes, I started pacing. A couple of minutes after that, I heard a cell door rumble open down the hall, followed by a round of truly impressive cursing from Rosalind. I heard another telltale rumble of a second cell door. Shit, someone said. Where's the inmate? Rosalind laughed. A second voice said. Look. 11's gone, too. Did they already transfer them out? Why would they send us down here if they already transferred them out, Paul? Because it's the agency of helping hands. The first speaker sounded even wearier than I felt. Let's get her upstairs and worry about everyone else later. I'd worry about yourselves if I were you, Rosalind said. One of them snapped at her. She snapped back as several sets of hurried footsteps faded away. Yet again, everything went quiet. Then someone shot out from under my bed. For once, it wasn't the Harlequin, it was Mary, which was somehow worse. Mary, drenched in sweat and streaked with dust, even though it was Mary. My brain was actively trying to autocorrect him into the Harlequin. The dissonance was so severe it nearly sent me into a panic attack. Bertie crawled behind him and straightened up, ruffling her feathers and pinning me with her empty eyes. Hello. Hi. But, I'm sorry, what the fuck, Mary? Why are you here? How are you here? What's going on? There actually isn't any time to explain. Where's Christoph? Ward 2, but what the actual hell are you? Why is he in Ward 2? One of his co-workers came and got him to handle an emergency. Mary went very pale. What the hell is going on? I repeated, you need to tell her. Bertie said, what's going on is you, me, and Christoph are all in a whole lot of trouble. Right now, Christoph is in the most trouble of all, so come on, you and I need to go save our soulmate before it's too late. At that moment, someone started pounding on the door again. Mary and I both froze. Let me in. It's me. Mikey. Relief flooded me for an instant, followed by suspicion. I remembered how Christoph looked and Mikey ran past Miss Polly. Like he was in trouble, or like he was a threat. Mary went for the door. Mary, don't. Listen, Bertie said. He swept a sweat-soaked sheaf of hair behind his ear, looking irritable. But it's Mikey. I don't care. Well, I do. Even if I didn't, we need all the help we can get. Trust me. He threw open the door, and Mikey barged in. Rochelle, you need to. He saw Mary and froze. Why are you in here? You're supposed to be with. We really don't have time for explanations, Mary said, especially with how long it takes me to give them, but since you all keep demanding one anyway, here's the shortest explanation I can come up with for both of you. Administration is trying to sell me to New Olympus. What? I gasped. Yeah, I know, Mikey said. That's why you're supposed to. Furthermore, he continued, a completely separate organization appears to have infiltrated Ward 2 and is currently trying to kidnap Christoph. Once they subdue him, they'll be coming for our favorite unlicensed therapist along with several others, some of whom are markedly less capable of defending themselves than she is, so I suggest the three of us immediately prevent these intruders from subduing him. Mikey hesitated, looking pained. I've already cut a door to Ward 2. It's under the bed. I know that's weird, but, well, there's no but, I know it's weird. I thought it would be funny. I can cut a second door in a less weird spot if you really want me to, but in all honesty it's a lot of work. I'm out of shape as it is, and it's all just a lot more effort than we can afford right now. So if the two of you could just get on your hands and knees and follow me, we can get down there and save our favorite person. I could see Mikey making a decision. All right, he finally said. Let's get down to Ward 2. We'll follow you. Mary clapped his hands and gestured to the bed. Excellent. Let's go. With that, he dropped down to the floor and started crawling. Feeling stupid but determined, I followed suit. From my new vantage point on the floor, I could indeed see the mouth of a small, almost exquisitely dark tunnel on the floor under the bed. There was only room for one person under the bed at a time, so I waited until Mary's feet vanished before crawling after him. Rochelle. Mikey's voice was strained. Go to your dresser, pick up your keycard and Charlie's keycard. And follow me. Obeying him wasn't the most natural thing in the world. It was the only thing in the world, nothing existed except Mikey's voice, not Birdie tottering after us, ragged wings flapping angrily, not the brutally silent corridor outside my door, or all the empty cells we passed, not the splash of blood drying on the door that led downstairs, not the staff huddled on the floor of the medical division, silent and terrified as hostages in a bank robbery. Not the instinct screaming in every last one of my cells that something was very, very wrong. Nothing but Mikey and the tiny voice in the back of my head marveling at how weirdly dreamy this all was. He led me down another hallway. 2 flights of stairs, another corridor, and yet another stairway. At the bottom was a short, steel-paneled hall. At the end was a cell with a heavily reinforced observation window and the thickest, heaviest door I've ever seen. Through the observation window I saw a room filled with machinery and dominated by a massive silver pillar. At the base was an enormous hospital bed. The patient upon it was connected to 4 drips and several monitors. An enormous cable coiled upward. One end was connected to the shimmering pillar. The other was embedded in the patient's chest. He was simultaneously huge and withered, an emaciated behemoth with dark red hair, 4 monstrous arms arranged at his sides. And a cracked, painted clown mask, Mr. Helping Hands, hovering by the door, looking almost off-puttingly normal today, was the Harlequin. When he saw me looking, he waved happily, smiling vaguely. I waved back. Go to the door and swipe both keycards to open his cell, Mikey told me. Then go inside. I did as he said. He and the Harlequin followed me in, then the Harlequin whirled around to face me. We have an enormous number of things to talk about. Unfortunately, we have no time to discuss any of them due to certain maternal complications. He shot an impressively disapproving look at Mikey. Mikey retorted, well, I'm not the all-knowing, reality-destroying God who claims to know everything. So what I don't know isn't as. The Harlequin snapped his fingers and thumb together. Mikey's jaw slammed shut with a sound that made me shudder. Are you finished? The Harlequin asked. When Mikey nodded sullenly, he splayed his fingers. Then he sauntered toward me as Mikey massaged his jaw, grimacing. It took all my resolve not to back away. He was so tall, and his eyes were so bright. Darling girl, he said, your pantheon is transferring custody of 4 of your friends and 2 of your enemies to the organization that butchered your magical bomb boy. They're not transferring. They're selling, Mikey said hollowly. My mom is one of them. Mary's another. They're taking Lore and Amina. 2. And they're taking Notgod More and Hadron. How? You can't sell people. That's not legal. Legally speaking, they aren't human, the Harlequin said. To be fair, some of them, Lore, for instance, or Notgod More, aren't technically human either. Not that it matters. What matters is your 4 friends and your 2 enemies, and you yourself, are legal property of the Agency of Helping Hands. Traditionally, the agency is very, very possessive of its toys. Unfortunately, it is also subject to orders from on high. The downside to lucrative contracts, I suppose. How can I help them? I asked. You can't. I am taking care of it, said the Harlequin. Or will. He mimed patting Mr. Helping Hand's masked forehead. Once you disconnect him. What? Despite everything, annoyance overwhelmed me. You hypnotized me into coming down here to unhook some wires. Why don't you do it? I can't. You're full of shit. Why am I even here? That, he said, is the question boring men have been asking themselves since the beginning of time. I have even less interest in answering that question for you than I did in answering it for them. Moving on, the freak on this table is much more than a freak. He is a power source for the entire pantheon. Some of the things he powers are defenses. These defenses don't affect me. However, they affect most of the other inmates. Including the individuals I am relocating at Michael's request today. If I forcibly relocate these people while the power source is connected, the relocation will essentially shred them. In the interest of transparency, I have no issue with this, but Michael does. I imagine you do, too. So, to avoid shredding your friends, you need to disconnect the power source. You need to do it now. I loaded every syllable with every bit of compulsion I could muster. Why don't you do it yourself? Because I cannot touch him any more than I can touch His Highness Mojave Green or the beautifully blind Love. If you tell that to anyone, you will be sorrier than anyone in the history of this agency has ever been. And that, darling girl, is saying more than even you will ever know. Then just make me forget you told me. You can snap your fingers and unexist movie franchises and entire counties, so why don't you just wipe my memory if you care that much? Because forced forgetting is hurt, and you are a child I cannot hurt. That's really convenient. Or maybe inconvenient. I don't know and I don't care. I still don't get it. Why can't Mikey step up to his table and remove the cables? Mikey said. I did as I was told. The first cable electrocuted me. All else aside, electrocution really sucks. Having your whole body frozen in place while simultaneously feeling like every cell inside it is moving so fast they're tearing you apart is bullshit. Anyway, the shock ended, and I kept working. Wire by wire, tube by tube, cable by cable, one by one. On the third to last cable, the lights began to flicker. On the final one, all the machinery died with forlorn wheezes as everything went dark. The auxiliary system kicked in almost immediately, but the Harlequin shut that off by repeating the gesture he'd used to silence Mikey. "Oh goodness," said the Harlequin. "I apologize. That really is too dark." A second later, the lights came back on. "Couldn't you have done that with the main power?" I asked irritably. "No," he said. "Now, up the stairs we go. You don't want to be alone with him when he wakes up." I glanced involuntarily at the body splayed on the bed. The clown mask glimmered dully. I suppressed a shiver and followed them out through the corridors, back up the stairs, and past the room where all the staff remained, eyes and heads down. As we approached the exit, I heard yet another commotion outside. Someone, was battering themselves against the door. There were voices, too. A voice, angrier than I'd ever heard it, than I'd ever been able to imagine it. The Harlequin approached the door with exaggerated care, placing his ear against the steel. Then he sighed. "He certainly is very angry. If you're going to insist on letting your bad dog sleep on the bed, you really do need to do a better job training him. Why can't he get in?" I asked. "If the systems are down, why won't the door open?" "Why do you think?" "Because it has a good lock." He rattled the handle to demonstrate, then wrapped his hand around it. "All the strong doors here have good locks because a good lock on a strong door is the most effective line of defense against everything except me. Step back, darling girl." And with one deft heave, he pulled the door off its hinges. Christoph hurled through, nearly colliding with the Harlequin. He course-corrected at the last second, almost toppling over, but he kicked upward, balancing himself as he ran toward me. Before I even realized what had happened, he'd carried me to the other side of the room. I noticed he was bleeding. And his shirt was soaked with sweat. The Harlequin massaged his temples. "For the last time, you lackluster brute, I am not going to hurt her." "I can't." "Did you plan it?" Christoph snarled. "Plan what?" The Harlequin asked. "Use your words, Mr. Wolf." "All of them. The people in Ward 2. Was that you?" "I have absolutely nothing to do with whatever you saw down in that sewer." "They tried to catch me," he said. "They are trying to take me, and they have come to take her too." The Harlequin's face changed then in a way that made me shudder. "Who has come to take her?" "The thieves Kyle is with." Mikey turned to the Harlequin. Mary said the same thing. "They have to come with us." "Both of them." "I'll take her, of course. I'll take her anywhere she wants to go. But I won't take him anywhere at all." "You have to." "I don't have to do anything," was the dismissive response. "This is your mother's fault, and her problem to fix. Why don't you just ask her to make her friends leave him here in the Pantheon? She hates him, after all. You have to help him." "What is happening?" Christoph shouted. "Administration is trying to sell my mother to New Olympus," Mikey burst out. "They came to pick her up this morning along with Notgod More, Mary, Lore, Amina, and Hadron. The Harlequin and I are getting them out of the facility before that happens. We're taking Senna too. But we needed help. Those people downstairs, they are shooting at the workers. At people like you. At me. How did you think they would save anyone?" "For the last time, I don't know who they are," the Harlequin said. "They have nothing to do with me, and everything to do with Michael's mother. She turned her nose up at my help, at the very last second, no less, and decided to save herself with the assistance of her new friends. Unfortunately, those new friends want to steal you and my darling girl. They can have you, but they can't have her." "They can't have him either," I said indignantly. "Darling girl, your dog is a woman beater. Not just any woman beater, but a woman beater extraordinaire. And I simply do not allow woman beaters in the city bright. How many times must I tell you?" Regardless, the bargain Michael struck was to save the sold inmates. The bad dog was not sold. He is being stolen. There is a distinct difference. "So you're taking all of those people to the city bright?" I asked. Despite everything, I was almost impressively stupefied. "Yes," the Harlequin shrieked. "How many times do I have to repeat myself? I am relocating the sold inmates, except Hadron, of course, because no woman beaters are allowed, and Senna to the city bright at Michael's request. They will be under my protection and utterly unharmed. In fact, they will be honored, no. Exalted, guests. I won't even force them feast. I will simply provide them refuge until and unless the agency reconsiders its relationship with New Olympus. It was a wonderful plan, but unfortunately other inmates made other, distinctly inferior plans. Plans you somehow supposedly couldn't see, Mikey said bitterly. There is no supposedly. For the last time, Michael, I was blinded. My own plans were being reflected right back at me. Can you see through a glaring reflection in a mirror? No, you cannot. What makes you think I'm any different? If you don't even know what's going on in this building, how are you supposed to hide any of us? As rude as that was, I'm still going to hide you. The Harlequin said. Good thing, too, because when it comes to you, your stepmother, so this is what you were planning? I asked Mikey. This whole time, your plan was to save these people by having him relocate them to the city, right? Somehow, my sarcasm escaped him. Yes, he said miserably. But my mom won't come, and Mary's gone, I don't know where. And my mother, she's been working with someone else, those Salem people. She and Ms. Polly and that stupid fuck down in Ward 2, they all plotted something and they promised them freedom. They're going to trade other inmates for their own freedom, and you and Christoph are two of the people they're trading. And this stupid fuckface, he pointed to the Harlequin, who claims he knows everything and will waste weeks spying and crawling around the entire goddamn Pantheon just to pick the most inconvenient time to steal Raphael's sunglasses, had no idea Salem was coming because I guess Ms. Polly is a metaphysical light shield that blinded him to her intentions or some, Mikey. There you are. Rosalind came loping through the broken door, but froze when she saw the Harlequin. Have you come to your senses? He asked coldly. She ignored him, focusing on Mikey. We have to go. The whole prison's in a power failure. Other inmates are breaking out in all the wards. If we don't leave now, I'm not going with you, Mikey said. I'm not going anywhere with that fucking clown. And neither are you. What did you call me? The Harlequin said haughtily. He's the only thing that can keep us safe. Safe? Safe? Nothing here is safe. None of these people are safe. Your father isn't safe, and your clown is the least safe thing on this planet. You think the people you're working with are safe? They aren't any different than the agency. I know, she said. But they'll be different to you and me, and that's all that matters. Mikey retreated towards the Harlequin. He'll take us wherever we want to go. We won't have to worry about these people or those people or anyone. We'll just have to worry about ourselves. I'm not going with that clown. Those people aren't saving you. They're just going to use you. Yeah. And who hasn't used me, Mikey? Tell me that. This agency, your father, the police department, the military, my own sister, your sister who's running around downstairs crying for you right now. Everyone's used me my whole life, she said. I'm done. Do you understand? But it's Christoph. Mikey sounded very young and very close to tears. You're trading Christoph to make them take me, just like the agency's trading you. Christoph doesn't even want to be alive. He doesn't deserve to be, and he shouldn't be. The agency's made him the worst thing he could ever be. Maybe these people can make him the best he can be. Maybe not. I don't know, and I don't care. Now come on. No. The way they looked each other broke my heart. Finally she said, after everything you know, and after everything they've done to me and everything they've done to you, this is what you want. The Harlequin sighed dramatically. Salem is close at hand and administration is prowling with their pet dragonfly, so we now have no time. Rosalind, are you coming with me or not? No. Then get out. She hesitated, looking defiantly from the Harlequin to Mikey. They held each other's gaze for another moment, then Mikey shook his head, and Rosalind left. I never liked her, the Harlequin said. Your father always had abominable taste in women. Off we go. He grabbed Mikey, who jerked away and spun toward Christoph. I'm not leaving them. And what about Mary? I don't see Mary. Do you? But Christoph is not my concern. You and your sister Aunt are. Darling girl, grab on. He held out a hand with a flourish. I stepped forward, but not to take his hand, just to act as Christoph's human shield. No. You, said the Harlequin, are not allowed to tell me no. I'm not going anywhere without him. To be honest, I wasn't even sure why I was arguing. The only place that could possibly be worse than a trafficker-infested Pantheon was the city bright, but Mikey was right. I wasn't going anywhere without Christoph. I will not help him, said the Harlequin. There is nothing any of you can do to change my mind. He is a woman-beater, darling girl. And even if he wasn't, which he is, I still wouldn't like him because he's unentertaining, predictable, stagnant, codependent, plain dependent, too insecure to put even the simplest original thought into action without encouragement, too old yet too young in the very worst ways, far too easy to hurt, and worst of all, French. I know you're not exactly a prime catch yourself, but you really can do better. No, I repeated, his face flattened into something cold and inhuman. Christoph tried to step in front of me, but I dodged him, maintaining my human shield position. Useless as it was, as I watched, the Harlequin's features shifted in almost imperceptible ways. I remembered his file, how it stated that he liked to rearrange his facial proportions in ways that inflicted psychological distress. Even though I knew that's what he was doing, it was working. I could literally feel the stress hives erupting. It took all my courage to stare him down. This is a waste, you know, he finally said. He is a waste. You are turning yourself into the greatest waste. Christoph tried to get between us yet again, but I pushed him back. To my astonishment, he stayed back. This is a tragedy, the Harlequin said. Not even a good one, and here you are choosing it anyway. I don't even have to hurt you because you hurt yourself. But when you hurt yourself, that hurts me. And I cannot tolerate being hurt. Then, I am about to do the greatest favor anyone has ever done or will ever do for you. Remember that when the time comes. If you don't, I will make you remember. He stepped forward with an awful finality as those stress hives exploded everywhere. Christoph pulled me back, shielding me. I rushed forward again, but he grabbed my arm and hurled me away. The time he took to force me to safety cost him the moment he needed to dodge the Harlequin, who took his head in both of his hands. I am going to enjoy this, he said. You absolutely will not. He smiled. For an instant, his human mask slipped. What I saw underneath made me want to die, but then Christoph screamed. That shattered the paralytic horror and I launched myself at the Harlequin. I collided with him, fighting and flailing. He didn't react at all until I hit him with the arm that Christoph practically snapped. I know it was that arm because it still hurt like a motherfucker, and hitting the Harlequin made it hurt even worse, but that hit, and that hit alone, made him stumble back. He released Christoph, who sank to the floor, sobbing. This is not what I wanted to happen. The Harlequin told me well, I wanted this to happen. He pointed to Christoph, who was kneeling on the floor, screaming, but not the rest of it. They're coming, and they intend to take you. Are you going to take your chances with this awful agency? Will you take your chances with those bumbling thieves? Or will you take your chances with your family? This cell, a new cell, or a big beautiful room in your father's house? Why is this even a question, darling girl? It was tempting, for just a second, it was tempting, but not tempting enough to leave Christoph, who was falling apart before my eyes. You take us both, or you fuck off, I said. At that moment, Mary came running, wide-eyed and frantic. When he saw the Harlequin, he stopped dead. The Harlequin briefly closed his eyes. I will pretend I did not hear that. I will even give you a chance to say goodbye to your bad dog while I relocate the other inmates. Michael, I will also allow you to use this time to say your goodbyes to your auntie's bad dog. By my estimation, which may or may not be correct, you have approximately 3 minutes before your mother and her friends arrive to dognap him. I will most likely be back before then, but it depends on how long it takes your friends to settle into the city bright. Speaking of which, friend. Grab on. He extended his hand to Mary, respectfully. Sir, I must decline. Oh, thank God, said the Harlequin. With that, he strode out of the room. I didn't have any time to process what had just happened because Christoph was sobbing on the floor. And whatever else he'd done, the Harlequin was right. Kyle and Rosalind and their monster traffickers would be back any minute. I approached Christoph carefully. He was on his knees, tucked against the wall, weeping. I'd never seen him like this, never imagined he could be like this. It was terrifying. It was unsettling too, which was worse somehow. Struggling to ignore my thudding heart, I knelt in front of him. He immediately recoiled, face twisting into a snarl even as tear tracks gleamed. Don't touch me. Not you. It's okay. I won't hurt you. That snarl remained for a moment before breaking apart. His shoulders heaved and he began to weep again. I know. I know you won't. You love me. You said it. Yes. Willing my hands not to shake, I reached out. I did. I do. We need to, but he reared back again. You hate it. You hate me. No. No. Christoph, I don't. I hate you. His snarl shattered a second time, and his face crumpled. No, I don't. I want to. No. I don't want to. I don't. I love you. I do. I didn't have the bandwidth to process the fact that he sounded like he was trying to convince himself. I didn't have the time either, because voices were approaching from the corridor. So were footsteps. Far too many footsteps. A scream echoed out in the corridor. The telltale rumble of a cell door sliding open reverberated through the floor. Followed by a peal of laughter that made me shudder. Desperate now, I got as close to Christoph as I could. He still didn't want to be touched, but finally he let me take his hand and complied when I stood up, pulling him along. No sooner had he climbed to his feet than Kyle came running through the door. Other people came up behind him. Some I didn't know, but a few I did: Rosalind, Miss Polly, Petra, Jessie, Lucy, and 2 Ward 2 inmates I knew by sight but not name. I stepped in front of Christoph, who was trembling so badly I was scared he'd collapse. Kyle was shouting orders, but no one heard them because the Harlequin came striding through the door behind them. At the sight of him, everyone recoiled. Rosalind, the Harlequin said, "I will ask one more time for Michael's sake. Will you come with us?" "No. He's not going with you either." I beg to differ. He snatched Mikey, who reared back as the world cracked open. A slit of cold, blinding light splitting the air and spreading in the air between us, like fire burning a hole through a sheet of paper. The Harlequin beckoned me. "Look quickly, darling girl, and you'll get your first, and until your dog is dead, only, glimpse of the city bright." With that, he stepped through, dragging Mikey behind him. I reached out reflexively, but Rosalind shoved me out of the way and dived, grabbing his hand. They made eye contact for a desperate, awful moment, then the Harlequin yanked him free and the portal snapped shut. Rosalind stared at the empty air, wide-eyed, then she whirled around, stalked toward me.
Until next time, subscribe to stay up to date with all updates. No screamers or shocking moments, only comfort and safety. Bye.